And if we could have our speakers up at the table. All right, folks, we are going now into the final session of our 13th Ministerial Seminar. And here we will have some industry briefs. We're getting some technology briefs, some industry watch type information. And we have 3 presenters this afternoon, whom I will introduce shortly. First, let me remember again to acknowledge our sponsors. We have Huawei, our gold sponsor, as well as Digicel, Lime, and CCT Wireless here from Tortola. And our sponsors have display booths just across the corridor on that side, on the other side of the entrance corridor. And you are encouraged to go visit them from time to time. Maybe at the breaks, you take a couple minutes to go and see what they have. So we acknowledge them, we thank them very much, and I think we should also take a look at what they've prepared for us across the corridor. So we're moving into the last 3 presentations for this afternoon, and the first one is from our gold sponsor, Huawei Technologies, and the topic is Innovative ICT Make Safe Cities Smarter. And the presenter is Mr. Christopher Lee Mills. And Christopher is the Chief Technical Officer of Government Solutions for the Latin American region at Huawei. He's based in Mexico. And Chris is responsible for Huawei's Safe City initiatives in the Latin American region. He assists large enterprises and governments define and architect e-government, smart grid, telehealth, and e-education initiatives. His technology focus areas include emergency command, intelligence surveillance, unified communications, security, and the Internet of Things. He's an expert in cloud automation, orchestration, and software-defined network technologies. And before joining Huawei, before joining the Latin American team, he worked for Huawei's headquarters in China as the Chief Technical Officer for the Unified Communications R&D Group. And previous to Huawei, he held strategy leadership roles in R&D and pre-sales with Symantec, RSA Security, Computer Associates, and Capgemini. He's a native of Boston, Massachusetts. He's lived for many years in China and is fluent in Chinese. And he tells me now he's in Mexico. He's just learning Spanish, but he has a ways to go. So I'll invite to the podium to give his presentation on smart cities, Mr. Christopher Lee Mills of Huawei. Please welcome him.
Thanks, Nigel. Okay, hi folks. It's a genuine honor, honestly. And every day I spend in paradise, I'm just grateful, for the opportunity. This is the perfect place. I regret that they were out of motorbikes yesterday. I went to 2 different places. The motorbike would have gotten me to the other side, and then I could have seen a little more of it. I thought a lot about how to handle my half hour, and very intent on remaining on schedule. I'm always really gratified when things go according to the schedule. Don't you agree? It's nice when you respect other people's time. So I've got a lot of slides. I'm sorry if I just gloss over a few things, but we just heard my bio. You know a little bit about me: Boston, China, Mexico, and as it happens, you know, the Caribbean is part of Latin America. Who knew? But here we are. So, but I'm hoping, you know, very much to engage with everyone and come back soon, you know, to the region. Anyone a news junkie? Guys watching the news? Yeah. 2 days ago, you know, I didn't even know it was going to rain in Boston, right? So, but I just saw that there's Category 3 hurricane. Joaquin. It's coming right across Bahamas, and now the models say that it's going to slam into Bahamas. Well, it's going to skirt the Bahamas, and it's going to bounce up to Bermuda. But these models are based on the European survey, the maps they have that come from Europe. You know, they're supposedly the most accurate, but the actual hit rate on these European models is quite low. They tend to have a lot of deviation to the result, but they're the best we have. They have 21 subsets, different scenarios about what could happen with a storm. I mean, anyone know anything about hurricanes? No? It's Category 3, all right? It's 50-foot waves, you know, sustained 120-mile-an-hour winds, right? Well, what happens with this storm is going to be fun. Now we'll all see what happens. There's a worst-case scenario in the U.S. I know that you know, we have hurricanes once in a while in the States, but the big fear is that a storm exactly like this will not go off to Bermuda, and instead it makes landfall on the East Coast. And typically the North Carolina folks are the ones that get the brunt of that. In the case of this storm, though, no one knows right now. I was just checking again. No one knows where it might make landfall. And so I have a friend of mine here from Washington, D.C. If this storm, and likelihood is that it wouldn't actually make landfall as a Cat 3. You know, it would be, yes, talking. It would become a Cat 2 storm by the time it hit. If it made landfall in Washington, D.C., that would be, you know, a Hurricane Sandy-like catastrophe. And you know, we have these situations, right? So what I'm talking about today is things that governments, you know, care about. We care about mitigating risk, right? So Huawei's role is something that's I hope you'll find interesting in all this. We've developed solutions for, you know, healthcare and education and energy, and one of our largest, most important solutions for this region, and you all in particular, is this Safe City initiative, and a lot of that is about disaster planning and mitigation. Because it's a brand, right? You know, we have the government is the face of a brand, and if you do your job well in the government, then the result is pride among the citizens. And I've done some sampling, some surveying myself. Spoke to the cab driver, you know, coming from the airport. Says government's pretty good here. Same thing with the lady at the ice cream shop. So I think you're in very good shape right now when it comes to the brand. So the goal here is just use technology, and we've talked a lot about ICT technologies today, but use that to just mitigate risk. The technology, what that gives you is a very powerful tool. It allows you to execute flawlessly. And when you do that, it reaffirms people's faith in the country and the brand. And this is what brings more business and more tourism, and everyone prospers as a result. Let's start with the first slide. I forgot my clicker. Okay. The first 10 slides of this, I'm going to go. you know, you're probably interested. Huawei is really big. It's a $46 billion company, and we're right on the side of ICT. And what happened was in China, they very quickly were able to bring a lot of pressure on some of the switch and router manufacturers. Ericsson, you know, Juniper, they're not our friends. You know, we pretty much took away their business, I'm afraid. So, but this is an example of hardware that's becoming commoditized, and the Chinese are driving this around the world. And you know, next thing you know, Huawei is a $46 billion company. It's pretty amazing what's happening. But the reality is that although a lot of the technology innovation happens all over the world, the actual work to build the products is in China. This is pretty much where the world manufactures everything now. So Huawei's built quite a very high level of skills and expertise in designing products. A lot of that is just sort of standard throughput and skills that have been derived from the manufacturing machine that is China today. And what that brings, what commoditization brings, is lower prices and better technology for everyone. We have a very intense focus on changing ourselves. So we started doing a lot of business in China and quickly realized that we needed to go become more of a global company. And this is why you're seeing me up here, you know, speaking English. I guess it's just, there's a very intense effort to just operate as a multinational company within Huawei. And the amount of investment around the world, it's just staggering. We have these technologies within Huawei, include cell phones. Has anyone seen a Huawei cell phone? No? Have you seen it? What do you think? Thumbs up? That's very good. Now, it's gratifying. I mean, I have a Huawei phone. I don't have any complaints. So, so there's a reason for this. The folks that are investing in R&D, I was in Huawei's R&D team for a couple of years, working on their video surveillance and also video conferencing and telepresence. Unified communications, which includes call centers as well as phones and the like. I was in R&D for a couple of years, and I've been in Mexico now doing this enterprise business in the Latin America region. But what really strikes me about Huawei is they have an enormous appetite for just swallowing, you know, whole segments, whole industries. And we started with the carrier world, and I think we've pretty much established ourselves in that space. But I mean, if you're in my shoes and you're looking at the world, it's, you know, carrier, telecommunications, it's just one vertical. This is just one segment, right? You've got manufacturing, you've got energy, healthcare, government, you know. There's a lot of other business to be done. And thankfully, through our hard work, we have joined the standards organizations, and we're actually one of the leaders right now in filing new patents around the world. So Huawei's made enormous progress just in the last few years, again, along the lines of ICT technologies. So these are some of the awards. Fast Company, maybe you've recognized, you know, Red Dot. They have, you know, design awards. So in terms of speeds and feeds and actual product things, if you dig a little bit, and I'm happy to share information with anyone that wants to talk products and technology, we're extremely competitive on the product side. I don't know that I want to bore you with all the technical details today in a half hour. It's just, there's just too much. But I will say that in almost every segment that we're serious about, that we really try hard and that we care about, we wind up just, it's a little scary, I think, for the competition. You know, especially if you're in the hardware business these days. It's going to be, you know, Huawei's. We're right on top at the moment. Okay, this is my area, is the enterprise business. The phones live over on the consumer side, and there's, of course, the carrier networks. And I think that everyone I meet from Huawei in the region, we're all from carrier network business. This is pretty much where we make our home in the region. So enterprise is much smaller, but it's coming on fast. I wanted to talk about these public safety threats. You know, it's really hard. Like we had under Clinton, FEMA in the U.S. It was decent. It was pretty. It had the appearance of being pretty good, but of course, you know, Katrina came around. It was just basically the emperor had no clothes at that point, and it was a massive, massive blow to the prestige of the government. And I don't think they've even recovered today. I think there's additional spending and some reorganization has helped. But my point is that when the worst happens, you pretty much can't bounce back. It becomes it's part of your historical legacy. And so in the government, when we talk about these things, the prioritization is always, it's not what you'd like it to be, because there are those with more experience who understand the risks, not just the risks, you know, to property and life, but the risks to the government itself. If you're not a proven performer and that you can show that you've really thought through your contingency and risk management planning, when the worst happens, and it will. I mean, we heard today that this actually, you know, this is even an earthquake zone. So the unthinkable, truly, it could happen in the case of an earthquake. For sure, it will happen. But these are examples of what happens: disease, traffic accidents. The next slide has some pretty strange examples here, as I recall. Let me see. All right. So what are we talking about? A Shanghai stampede. No? Everybody familiar with the? No? I'd never seen this before until I looked at this deck. But evidently there was a stampede. It's not hard though to. Just this week, right, with the Saudis. I mean, just yesterday, they were getting killed. They were getting killed, you know. Oh, you said, you know, 763, and, you know, but you sent, you know, pictures of bodies that counted to something like 1,100 people, you know. So the ineptitude, it's made them a laughingstock. And it's just, the anger is just unfathomable. You can imagine just the mismanagement. Okay, you say, you know, Saudi Arabia. Now it's like a third world country. If you ask them if they're a third world country, they'd say no, we're one of the world's wealthiest countries. The quality of living in Saudi Arabia it's amazing. You have to come to Riyadh, you know, to see if you can get a visa. But what about Egypt? You know, they had what was it? 15 Mexicans were just, you know, they were killed by the Egyptian government. They shot a missile at these poor tourists, you know. So what the real problem here is this. It's this lack of communication and collaboration within the government, within you know, the various agencies. They simply don't work very well together. So this is the problem that technology has to solve. There's a policy aspect to it, but it's a technology problem. So the good news is that, all right, so this guy, Zhou Kehua, any Chinese in the room? No? Zhou Kehua did a lot of serial killing in China. Again, you know, this is not news that I would expect anyone to know, but the point here is that it's not enough just to have very timely and very quick and very professional response to an emergency. You have to learn. You have to learn what's happening. You have to track the data. And this plays straight into open data and big data in these conversations. So the analysis of how to improve and how to track over time trends for public security, trends that have implications for public safety, this is equally critical. So this process of revisiting the data and understanding these trends, it just lends to a much better managed society. Okay, I have a couple more slides here. Let's see. Talking about, this is a call center and a commander in the field. These are examples of the groups that need to coordinate closely. Okay. I love these builds. Okay, so, I mean, we all know this, right? So these are groups that need to work better. This is how they work better. So the intelligence itself is fragmented. A lot of it is manual, prone to error. The collection of the intelligence is done perhaps very well, but it's not shared across the agencies. And so if you can enable this collaboration, then at least you have some facts at your disposal. What I really like to stress today is this third one. And it's just impossible to really know the situation on the ground without audio and without video. You can't really know. And it has to be in real time, and it has to be of sufficient quality to enable you to make decisions. The video, of course, requires a lot of bandwidth, and it requires very strong connectivity. So the message here is that if you have the technology on your side and you have the policies in place to enable these agencies to collaborate better, then it's I won't say it's easy because the technology is quite complicated, you know, in truth. It's not cheap, but what you get at the end is this ability to, throughout all three stages, you know, prior, during, and after an emergency, then you have a very tight way of, you know, implementing these processes and allowing these teams to re-architect themselves to share information and act on that information in a much more timely way. So we have, and these are always wrong, by the way. You see these timeline slides? We say, where are we here? Yeah, all right. We're like right after this dash, supposedly. But in reality, no. We're like probably, okay, here. You know, we're just becoming all IP. This is only happening just now. It's incredible to me that, I mean, perhaps it's wishful thinking, and I'm not saying that Huawei, you know, isn't aware of the reality, but, you know, it's the pace of change in technology. We're just on these very, very long cycles, and unfortunately, in the world of IT, these cycles have become compressed and compressed and compressed now, so that what used to take 4 years or 3 years, you know, LTE, these major changes, all of that's happening in, you know, 3 and 4 month cycles now on the IT side. And this is a cloud, multi-tenant, shared subscription platform where you sign on to new services. The development happens constantly. There's no more giant products that are rolled out as software applications that require, you know, patches and maintenance. That's no longer the model. So the world has changed, but there are areas, there are vertical segments in the world, and, you know, energy is a great example. I think government, education, they have not really received the memo yet that that the cycles of change now are compressed to just a matter of months, and so the disconnect is, it's important to realize that, and it's important to plan around newer technologies that can take advantage of the IT environment, things that are happening in the world of IT, and try to apply those onto your telecommunications infrastructure. If you're waiting for your carriers, your partners in the carrier world, they're also looking at this, but, you know, they're revenue driven. So the strategies to get there cannot be the same as from a government. A government will force policies which require re-architecting earlier systems. But if you're just, I was a product manager for years. I mean, the way that we would produce a new release is just, you know, we would ask our customers, what are the top features? And we would collect all the top feature requests from, you know, our biggest customers. And then we would take the top 5 of those, and that would be the next release. Those days are long gone. You know, it's no longer that kind of world anymore at all. So for vendors now to respond to requirements from governments, you need to be very clear about the project planning. The detailed project planning comes from you, and the vendors will bid on what you're saying, basically put their best foot forward in terms of an overall, you know, solution and strategy, and bring in the services organizations and the like. It's really no longer about the hardware or software or any of that. It's just project management and planning. And then for this, you need to be able to take a set of take a set of problems and break them down into manageable pieces. Okay, this is a look at what Huawei is selling. So this is my talk today is. I'm one of the sponsors, you know, so I paid, you know, to have. I'm just kidding. This is where you have to sit a little bit through Huawei's introduction to what we sell. But I hope you'll find it a little interesting. There's some areas here. I think the next slide is a little better here. Okay, let's just talk about. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but essentially, the primary offering is this one. And your operations center typically will be a data center, and it will have replication to, you know, a disaster recovery separate center that is equipped to basically maintain synchronization depending on the need for real-time cutover to the disaster recovery facility. We can also design systems that will have, you know, very immediate almost real-time cutover to the other data center. And this is done through software-defined networks and virtualized data centers that can reside physically far away, but they're always interconnected. And then the interconnect between the data centers is typically it's a very difficult problem to solve, but you know, Huawei's we're one of the leaders in that space. So there's a call center aspect, there's a video conferencing aspect to this, and as we get down to actual disaster management, I'm going to talk first here about let's see, why don't we go in order? So you're probably aware that cameras are pretty smart these days, right? Intelligent video surveillance, that would be an example of that. Would be like if you had a barrier in the highway and you had a video camera trained on that highway barrier, and suddenly something tried to cross that barrier, then you've identified areas of the video where it will raise an alert automatically. Are you familiar with this technology? Intelligent video surveillance. The cameras are, you know, they're a little more expensive, they come with some software. So this is a big part of what Huawei does for city management, especially in plant security and plant surveillance, any sort of protected area. These intelligent video surveillance cameras are, you know, they're very useful for that. Automatically raises an alert, and that alert can be rechecked by other equipment and then passed on for escalation. The cameras are one thing. A lot of this has to do with the actual network infrastructure. There's multi-tenant cloud applications that can, in a very timely way, take the alert and forward it to the proper agency for collaboration, depending on, so you can define policies around the alerts themselves. And so it would automate the process of involving multiple agencies. Okay, this is a sensing, what we talk about, the Internet of Things. The next part here has to do with transportation. It's a great source of revenue, you know, if you can do a good job of your transportation system. But I mean, in the end, though, the goal here is for just to solve congestion, but also to make people's lives much easier, just through very tight management of the roadways. Transportation is a big area for Huawei. It has a lot. There's a lot involved. It's really not just only bridges and highways and roads. This includes railroads, light rail, ports, basically any sort of transportation hub. This next part here, this media share, a lot of this is about very high-speed wireless interconnectivity, and it is post-disaster. Okay, so the idea here is that you could send some guys into, you know, a hillside with a box on their back, and they could set it up, and that would be, you know, this high-speed broadband wireless connection, very, very close to wherever the disaster is happening. And then that video feed is very reliable, and it has amazing range, you know. So the idea here is that The first responders now, they're not there to just take photos, right? They're actually transmitting video from, from the disaster area. And then the last part here is that this is backed up with Huawei's networks, and I won't go into too much detail here, but the Agile Net Connect, these are means that the systems that we sell are they're pre-integrated. So it's like plug and play in the field. You don't need an actual services engineer on site to configure, your broadband wireless connection. It's literally designed to work right out of the box. It's pre-integrated, so it saves an enormous amount of time. Anyone can operate it. The next part here, of course, is our cloud strategy. This is my my own area of expertise. So if any questions about this, responding to emergencies? This goes into a little bit more detail, but essentially your LTE, EPON, these are microwave for long distance backhaul. There's this Wi-Fi. These are the technologies, the network technologies that we rely on for this end-to-end emergency response system. Let's call it an emergency command center. And alarms. I talked a little bit about this early warning, but the cameras are very powerful, and the configuration of the sensors on the cameras can automate processes that are extraordinarily detailed. Very sophisticated actions can be taken with different levels of permissions to who can access the information, how it's routed. So the policies attached to the types of alerts that the cameras can send, there's a certain amount of integration work, but this is the magic, really, on the video side. Okay, this is we're talking here about some software, really computer-aided dispatch. These products, I mean, Huawei's not the only one that sells CAD products, but we're quite proud of ours, and we have a number of products that we integrate with. So it's not that you would need to be locked in, to Huawei just only to support your CAD software. Okay, during the event is where you need to access all of the teams, all of the experts, and here we have different agencies. There's you can see in the middle, there's your panoramic display. These are all Huawei endpoints. They're all peripherals developed and delivered by Huawei. Everything you see in this picture. It includes trunking, push-to-talk phones, as well as anything digital, anything analog, laptops and tablets and the rest. We manufacture everything ourselves in China. We design the chips ourselves that go into the products that we manufacture. So acting in real time during the event, this is your video communication, just the critical video communications using these technologies I just talked about. The key word here, and I hope that everyone's hearing me say video a lot. You should keep hearing the word video and video. This is because it was never possible before. With video and with shared access, correct shared access to the video, it's actually amazing. It's really amazing. It's a game changer when it comes to emergency response. So no more will there be questions about dispatch, how to handle. You can imagine if there's just a prolonged emergency, people get frustrated very quickly. So these video systems, you can really fathom in real time the situation on the ground, and sharing that video seamlessly across multiple concerned parties. This is the key to accurately prioritizing, your dispatch. Okay, I'm going to. Oh, we have another. There it is. Here we go. This is how the video works. Okay. All right, I said I was going to keep to the time, and I don't have a watch in front of me, but I want to play a video before I finish up. We did all this work. We did all this work in Trinidad, and I thought that I don't want to tell you myself. I'd rather let the gentleman from Trinidad explain what Huawei did for them. Again, the technology is one thing, but I think in his talk you can really understand it's a project. Getting these projects off the ground and effective project management is a services engagement. It's not a hardware engagement or a software engagement. And so the key selling factor for Huawei is that we had, the trained technicians. If you don't mind, I'm just going to sort of option 1, police. Okay, I think this is it. Okay, can we fire up the video? I think that's it. Okay.
I am Commander Garvin Hero. I'm the Executive Director of the National Operations Center, Trinidad and Tobago, which falls specifically under the ambit of the Office of the Prime Minister, Trinidad and Tobago. I'm giving a short history. The Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, the Honorable Kamala Persad Bissessa, is the chair, the head of security for the region of the Caribbean, known as CARICOM, the Caribbean Community. The National Operations Center is a new entity for Trinidad and Tobago to treat with situational awareness and also provide a common operational picture, not only for national security, but for the whole of government. We are utilizing systems integration, crisis management, and real-time decision-making, both in a tactical aspect and also in a strategic aspect. And we report directly to the Office of the Prime Minister. Based on globalization and the trends that are taking place today in the world, Trinidad and Tobago saw it necessary to embark on a project so as to enhance and develop the National Operations Center to a unit that would be comparable within the global frame, that would also be, in essence, a first world premier entity, a platform that would have systems integration, a platform that will provide communications, command, and control to treat with security and defense from an intelligence-led perspective. In order to do that, we began research and analysis on what would be the appropriate technology, what would be the appropriate systems and the architecture to provide such a product so as to lift or elevate Trinidad and Tobago to that specific standard. In our exploratory discussions and in our research, we began to interface with Huawei. And Huawei began speaking with us, holding a series of meetings and discussions. And it was not just only for the provision of technology. It was most importantly, which we appreciate today, the provision of a solution that can be applicable to Trinidad and Tobago. Each country, and even the countries represented today at the conference, could sit and be blown away by the technology and all of the fancy stuff that you can put into a system to enhance your security initiatives. But what is most important is finding a solution that is applicable to your country, that is applicable to the culture of your people, and that is applicable to the challenges of the domain within which it has to operate. This is what we appreciate most about Huawei. They came on the ground, they're experts, and walked with us. They spoke with us. They flew in our helicopters and looked at our country and our island. And they began to paint a picture of what is most necessary right now for Trinidad and Tobago. Not necessarily to treat with some of the threats that we are facing, but most importantly, to treat with the flexibility for advancement, for growth, and for development, so that we can be a first world premier platform that would encourage others to want to visit, that would encourage other stakeholders you have, and to more or less embark on a model similar to what we are doing. Our purpose Our value is to basically deliver to Trinidad and Tobago a product that will restore safety and security for our citizens. Our intention is to utilize the dynamics of technology and of architecture, but more so of partnerships with first world stakeholders, Huawei being our premier stakeholder. We are very appreciative today for the emphasis of research and analysis. We are very appreciative of the fact that the safe city concept has now been embedded in our vocabulary. We speak it, we understand what it is, and Huawei is walking side by side with us. They have now instituted a specific project that will provide timelines and deliveries, and that would move Trinidad and Tobago's National Operations Center to an international level, to a level where we would now be playing at the world stage. Our training, our development, our certification, even in the lines of technology and also operability, will be enhanced through the Huawei's deliverables. So for that, we are eternally grateful. We continue to work along the lines of project development, because the flexibility of the project has to cater for the evolving of technology and also the evolving of crime and some of the threats that we are facing today. One of the major threats, challenges that we are facing is transnational organized crime. And therefore, the system integration, the intelligence-led perspective, and also the utilization and compatibility to some of our key players is beneficial towards the perfection of the KPIs, the key performance indicators articulated in the Huawei project. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, the international intelligence partners, also the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Management, and all of the other ministries with whom we interface, has now to play at the level, to drive in the lane that is first world. And through Huawei, they are extending the capabilities of reaching out to these other ministries so that the National Operations Center would stand up and would escalate its capabilities so as to treat and to deal with all of these challenges. So today, I have no reservations in admitting, advocating strongly for the good working relationships that we share with Huawei and the intended project and the future of this project. We would continue to adhere to all of the protocols and the processes that are necessary to ensure the perfection of such a project. The successability of this project is not only for Trinidad and Tobago, not only for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, but more so for the region of the Caribbean. Because once we succeed, it will inoculate the decision-making of all of the Caribbean islands. And so we would be the pioneer. We would be the first to move in this direction and also to encourage not necessarily a country, as I said, but a region. As I said before, the integration and the working relationships that we share has been embedded into the relationships now with Huawei and Trinidad and Tobago, and we stand firm to support all initiatives of the project for all future endeavors. Thank you very much.
Any questions to Chris at present? There seems to be one.
Just one quick question. I'm still not clear. I know it's national security, but what exactly was put in?
We put in we put in 2 data centers. We had disaster recovery data centers mirroring the 2, and we had a mobile command vehicle that's equipped with those broadband wireless communications equipment loaded on the vehicle, so that you know, they could operate the government remotely.
Any others? All right. Yes, there is one here. Quick one. You could sit.
Yes.
Yeah, you could sit.
Was any of this interface with the 911 system?
Yeah, it's very high.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's on now. Yes, it was. It's that National Operations Center, which is an integrated command center for national security. Is it fully operational?
The project was designed by priority, and it was rolled out in phases, but there was a major tender which was won by Huawei. So no, it hasn't been fully delivered yet, but it's like a 4-year project. So we've been at it for about 18 months now.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. There was one more announcement I needed to make, which was to point out to you that in your packages you should have received a seminar evaluation form, which we would like you to fill out by the end of the day, after you would have heard all the presentations. We're very much interested in getting your candid impressions so that we can continuously improve our events. So please locate it, and if you do not have one, you can ask our coordinator at the coordinators table there for one. All right, so we'll move on to our next brief now, which is from more of a service company on the internet side, the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, or ICANN as we typically call them. We're going to hear from Mr. Albert Daniels, who is the Senior Manager for Stakeholder Engagement in the Caribbean. He's going to talk about deepening participation in ICANN and make the case that it is a Caribbean imperative. So I'll invite Albert to come forward now to give his presentation. Please welcome him.
Thank you very much, Nigel. It was interesting to me that Nigel spoke about your presenter evaluations just before I came to make my presentation. Thank you for that, Nigel. Acting Secretary General of the CTU, Nigel Casimir, government ministers and government officials, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers recognizes the work of the CTU and recognizes that it is very important work that it is doing for the Caribbean. And this is why we continue to attend CTU events, participate in those events, and give as much support as possible to the CTU, particularly in their coordinating role as it relates to different issues related to the Caribbean. Perhaps you can put the presentation up for me? Thank you. So, as I look around the room, and I was paying very close attention, I observed several things. One thing that I observed was most of you are still awake, and that's a good thing, because we know it's been a long day, it's been a long 2 days, it's been a long 3 days for some of you. But more importantly, or more seriously, I recognize some familiar faces who I've seen at several different CTU meetings, but I also see some new faces. And what I expect is that at future meetings, I will no longer see some of the new faces. And this is what I wanted to talk about a little bit today: deepening participation. Deepening participation in fora like the CTU, deepening participation in ICANN, and looking at this from a very general perspective. So this question is the question that I really want to look at a little bit. We're talking about the CARICOM single ICT space, and I want to talk about where it fits in to the global ecosystem of what's going on. There's a global ICT ecosystem, there's a global internet ecosystem where ICANN is just one of the players. So just as you are participants to this meeting, there's the expectation that you should also be participants in a global mechanism, because what is happening at a local and regional level ties in very integrally to what's happening globally. Now, I know you can't see the screen, but 3 key points to my presentation. First, I'll give you a brief overview of what ICANN is all about. Then we'll look at the multi-stakeholder model and approach. And then we'll try to answer the question, why? Why should you be making efforts to deepen this participation. Now, we already heard from John Curran from ARIN this morning, talking about IP addresses and numbers that allow the computers to talk to each other. He mentioned that there are regional internet registries which dish out these IP addresses to countries, to governments, perhaps to ISPs. ARIN serves part of the Caribbean, and Kevon is also here from LACNIC, which serves part of the Caribbean as well. But all of those RIRs get these numbers from ICANN. So ICANN manages that global system of unique identifiers, and it manages that system. Basically, it keeps the internet running based on policies that are developed by a multi-stakeholder, bottoms-up approach. A little bit different to how other organizations operate, a little bit different to how governments operate, but we operate in a bottoms-up approach. And that approach utilizes the inputs of multiple stakeholders: governments, business, technical users, end users, the academic community. And what has been found over the last couple of months, years, and so on, since ICANN has been promoting this approach, is that it results in a situation where there's a higher level of legitimacy. It is far more complex and complicated, because putting 1,500 or 3,000 people in a room to discuss an issue will take a little bit longer to arrive at consensus than if you have, 5 or 10. But in the end, you have a position that has incorporated the views of all. There may be disagreement, and whatever position you arrive at will have a greater level of legitimacy. So the ICANN community is essentially a community of communities, because if we look at the business community, for example, you would have several businesses, you may have trade associations. If you look at governments, you'd have governments from different countries, you would have intergovernmental organizations. If you look at the academic community, you'd have universities, and you would have individual professors and other academics. So it is a very, very broad community. And when you become a stakeholder in this community, different things might happen. You may stay and become active and vocal, or after the first meeting where you walk in and think that you fit, that you're not in the right place and there's not a good fit, then you may never come back. And the voices of the Caribbean, which should be important voices in policy making, have tended to disappear, particularly in ICANN. And you can't really see this slide, but these are some of the reasons. We've spoken to persons who've come to these meetings, and these are some of the things that they say. They go to an ICANN meeting or they go to another meeting, and 15% of what is discussed is of value to them or of interest to them. The other 85%, they couldn't, care less. Or going to these meetings is important, but it takes so much time for an individual, for example, from government, who is concerned about electrical utilities, water utilities, construction, and so on, that there just is not enough time to pay attention to what's happening. Someone, a Europe-based GAC representative, I'll mention the GAC in a while, it says, it took 18 months before I felt comfortable enough to speak up in one of these international fora. But it's not all bad news. It's not all doom and gloom. One person who had gone to their first meeting, a first-time working group participant, says, I gained a large network of contacts with shared experience and greater understanding of some of the areas of ICANN policy and how ICANN works. So sometimes after an initial fora into these different areas, individuals are able to participate effectively, but sometimes you never see them again. And that is the problem that I think we need to address. Do we really need to be at these international fora? Do we need to be at ICANN? Do we need to be at the ITF, at ISOC, at ARIN, at CITEL? Yes, we do. But why is it that we don't continue to attend? And these are some of the pain points, P-A-I-N points that have been identified. Complexity. Within the ICANN structure, there are 90 priority issues. I will talk about 2 of them today. But can you imagine walking into an environment where 90 different things are being discussed and 15% of them do not really relate to you? You don't find value in following them? Time and expense, we already spoke about that. Many of us would like to go to these meetings, but we just don't have the time. We have a lot to do. Language and connectivity, not so much of an issue for us. Knowledge requirements, we heard about capacity building from Dr. Jules at the OECS today. Intimidating incumbents. At an ICANN meeting, there are persons who have been to 20, 30 meetings. They get up and speak. Their heads are wrapped around these issues for many years. So you being a first-time attendee may be intimidated. And as a result, you would not take the opportunity to give your country's position, to give your sector's position, or to give your government's position. So one of the key recommendations in entering into these international arena is to take an approach of looking at issues. Try to latch on to specific issues that are of relevance to you and zoom in. In the case of ICANN, there are 90 active issues that are being discussed. 60 of them are at what we refer to as the working group stage. Within ICANN, policy is developed, and the way policies are developed, groups of volunteers are put together to tackle a particular issue. It's useful if you have some background in the area, but the resistance, or there's very low resistance to joining these working groups, and they are always a good opportunity to learn more about policy development generally, and also more about the issues themselves. So there's several working groups, and some of the issues that are being discussed at ICANN, human rights, the IPv4 and IPv6, the new generic top-level domains. We heard a little bit about domains earlier today. Internationalized domain names. Security is a big issue, and there's several aspects of security that are being discussed. And what we found is that there are perhaps 3 distinct stages of participation in international fora. You have the new people, the neophytes, the explorers, those who have gone to their first meeting, and those who are learning a little bit about ICANN. And at that point, you can't really immediately take much back to your country or stand up and ask a question of relevance. But then you have the engagement stage. Those who have learned as a result of using tools and attending webinars and so on, and they have learned enough to be able to contribute to the discussion, contribute to the policy development. So a presenter gets up and speaks about a topic, and they can give an informed opinion, an informed view, an informed concern from a country based on having been involved, and the voice becomes active. And we're finding that this is the area where there is the gap. Sometimes we get the fellowships to attend the meeting, so we go once. If the meeting is in Singapore or in Paris, I mean, we go on the sightseeing, we have a good time, and we don't return. But if we are able to start wrapping our heads around the specific issues that are being discussed, then eventually we are able to have an active voice, which is important, and I'll show you why in a second, which is important in the international arena. And it is always exciting when the transition takes place from those who are speaking up on issues to the position where they become leaders in the community. So instead of just being a participant on a working group, perhaps they become the chair or the vice chair of that working group. And then, as we know in international fora, if you are the chair or vice chair of a working group, then you're able to voice your region's position, your country's position, a little bit more than you would otherwise be able to. And just by your very presence on the working groups, on the committees, you are recognized as a leader, representative of your community, and the viewpoints of your community are able to move forward. And then, of course, we speak about ambassadors. Now, what are the issues? One big issue that is being discussed right now in ICANN is the IANA stewardship transition. And without going into much of the detail about it, basically the US government has a level of oversight over the internet. Is the internet important to any of us in here? Of course it is. What's the first thing that we do when we get out of bed this morning? Don't all answer at the same time. But many of us reach for our phone and we check to see, whether we got any WhatsApp messages or whether we got any email. And we could not imagine a day, many of us, without the internet working. Hands up, everybody who can imagine one day without the internet working. One or two of you, or maybe I suspect you would like to have these without the internet working. But the internet is important to us. But how many of you realize that the US government, a single government, has this important area of oversight over how important aspects of the internet are governed? So the US government back in March 2014, after 15 years of a contract with ICANN, indicated that it was ready to give up this oversight to a multi-stakeholder entity. So this has been discussed for just over a year. And is this something that is important to governments? Of course it is, because no individual government would want any other government to have such an important oversight over a resource that is critically important to economic and social development. Is it important to business? Of course, this oversight, this topic is important to business. $8 trillion United States dollars of business per year takes place over the internet. Does any of that impact the Caribbean? Of course it does. Businesses should be paying attention to how the internet is being governed. The technical community for several years has been asking for this type of oversight to change. They are interested. They have been saying, we do not want a single government to have oversight over this important technical function. We feel that it should be done by a technical organization. And of course, civil society has a very important role to play in what's going on, because civil society has tended to show that they are good in terms of keeping organizations in check, whether it be businesses, whether it be governments, whether it be other organizations. So they need to be interested and they need to have their voice in what's going on. But interestingly, when you look at the comments that have come on this important topic of the IANA stewardship transition, there are hardly any from the Caribbean. As a matter of fact, in the policy development process, there's always a call for public comments. And at the end of the last public comment period, there were 167 public comments, some from individuals, some from organizations, some from governments. And guess what? There was not a single comment from the Caribbean. This is the problem. We need to start paying attention to what is going on. We need to ensure that topics as important as the stewardship transition of IANA have input from stakeholders in the Caribbean. Now, this transition is at a very critical stage, because resulting from the discussion on the transition was another discussion on ICANN's accountability. Now, what you see up there is just a short sampling of mechanisms within ICANN which facilitate accountability, but accountability can always be improved. So there's a discussion going on parallel to the transition discussion about ways that ICANN's accountability can be improved. And there are two tracks. There's a track of accountability related to the transition, and there's a track of longer-term accountability improvements. This particular topic of ICANN accountability is now having the potential to hold up the transition. In speaking to stakeholders in the Caribbean, the CTU and others, I get the feeling that most people tend to think that the transition is a good thing. They also tend to think that since there's consensus on 80 to 90% of the accountability issues, that the transition should be allowed to go forward, even though there are other things to be discussed afterwards. But here is the problem. The Caribbean has not said so. So the entire IANA stewardship transition coordination group, which is keeping a record of the discussions, keeping a record of the meetings, keeping a record of the viewpoints, has no indication of how the Caribbean feels on this important point. So even though most of you have indicated, most of the governments have indicated that in principle they agree with the transition, there's the possibility that the coordination group, not knowing that there's a strong support for this transition, may not take that into consideration when the final decision is made. That's one. Another short one is in relation to what we refer to as generic top-level domain names. We all know that websites, many of them end in .com, .int, as in the case of the CTU.edu. Those are what we refer to as generic top-level domains. And many of you who represent governments are aware that they are country code top-level domains for St. Kitts.kn, for St. Lucia.lc, for Barbados.bb, for Trinidad.tt. And what ICANN did over the last couple of years was make attempts to expand competition and choice. So instead of only having .com, .org, .edu, and so on, we said anyone can make an application for a new domain name. And there were some very interesting applications, .hotels, .car, .religion, .food. And in some cases, there were multiple applications for single names, .ltd. Several companies decided that, hey, that would be a good domain name. Maybe we could make some money off of it. Let's apply for it. So you have contention. And one of the mechanisms that ICANN used to resolve that contention was an auction. There were several auctions, and as a result of those auctions that have taken place, there is $58.8 million US in a fund that ICANN is holding. So the question is, what should that money be used for? I'm sure many governments will immediately come up with 10, 15 projects. The CTU can come up with many more projects where those funds can actually be used. If Caribbean stakeholders do not participate in the public comment period on how the proceeds of these funds should be used, guess what? We don't stand a chance of getting any of those funds. But if we do not participate in ICANN beyond the entry level, if we do not get familiar with what's going on and what the issues are and how ICANN came by this money and what the process is for suggesting what this money could be used for, then the process of public comment will come and go, and the Caribbean would not have had the opportunity to benefit from it. So I mentioned that there were 90 topics, and I've spoken about 2 of them, and we can have discussions afterwards about many other ways in which you can participate. There is a space within ICANN for all of the stakeholders. There's a space for government. It's called the GAC, the Governmental Advisory Committee. Representatives of governments go to the GAC, they discuss the issues, and then they issue advice to ICANN. There are also spaces for the business community, for ISPs, for end users, for the academic community. And those ovals that you see are just some of the spaces within ICANN that you can each fit in and make your contributions to policy development. And the way it works generally is that you join a working group and make your comments there and make your contribution there, or you make comments, informed comments during a public comment period, or you actually, as an organization, submit proposals. So the point is we should be paying attention to what's happening globally. We should make efforts to deepen our participation by attending the webinars, attending the capacity building, and finding out how and why we should participate in fora like ICANN. So that is 21 out of my 30 minutes. I know it's been a long day. I will stop here, and I am available if anybody wants to talk a little bit more, particularly the government representatives. My work was done since the social event last night, because I think I've spoken with most of you. So this is like a reinforcement so that you would send me those emails that you promised so we can start the engagement going on. Thank you very much.
Yes. I want to leave a couple minutes for any questions for Albert. Or was he such a good limer last night that he really dealt with everything? All right, we are running a little bit behind the scheduled time, so if we have nothing further from right now, I will go on to the final presentation for this for today with respect to the industry briefs in particular. And this final presenter is Mr. David Franjoso. And David is the Senior Solutions Architect with CCS Group Limited in Bermuda. Just a short introduction. And he joined CCS in 2013 as a Senior Marketing Consultant, and he's now Technical Lead for the Service Provider Infrastructure Division. Before this, he'd spent 8 years with IBM as a networking engineer, working on several high availability data centers across Europe, before moving on to global systems integrator to be a lead consultant in several IP MPLS across 3 continents. He has extensive experience working in massive scale data centers and cloud environments, and he has service provider core environments, as well service provider core environments. He has several Cisco certifications, including dual Cisco certified network expert in routing and switching and service provider. He's also an accomplished Cisco certified systems integrator, creating innovative network designs and teaching the activities he enjoys most. So I guess he'd want to teach us something about cloud architecture for unifying multi-government services in the Caribbean basin. So how can we unify multi-government services around the Caribbean? He's going to suggest a cloud architecture for us. So please welcome David.
And I'm also Huawei certified. So first of all, thank you for the invitation. Well, first of all, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you for the invitation. It's a real honor to be here in front of you. I brought to you an idea that it's already used on mid-sized corporations, large corporations. It's used already in the business world. And so what I'm going to present to you is not rocket science. There is nothing that really new. But what I think it's new, it's the use in the government. So that's, well, here is the pointer. So first, a brief introduction of CCS. So CCS was founded in 1982 in Bermuda. It's a service integrator. But the key point that I want to give you regarding CCS is that, and it's a point that I'm very proud of, is that we are a company that our middle name is innovation. So we strive for innovation. And that's CCS. We recently branched out to Lisbon, Portugal, to follow up our customers. And we are in the process of opening a new office in the region as well. That's CCS in a nutshell. So David in a nutshell. So I was founded in 1979. So I'm 3 years older than CCS. I'm not a native English speaker. So if you don't understand my English, I will switch to Portuguese. And I'm a subject matter expert in core routing, data center, and security. That's me in a nutshell. So, and I'm leading a team of individuals addressing projects in service providers, in governments. And what do we deliver? So we not only deliver the consultancy services, we also deliver the implementation services. We also are able to manage what we implement. And this is new because I never understood why CCS has a procurement services. Sometimes very difficult to ship equipment to Bermuda and to treat of all the logistics. So we cover the complete life cycle, the complete project life cycle. So since time is short, let's start with the meat. So this is the agenda for today. So building an IT infrastructure with cloud services. I'm going to start with the vision and the objectives. Then I'm going to present you the building blocks, very high level, because from each building block, I could be here a couple of weeks just speaking about it. Then I'm going to present some use cases, and then if you have any questions, you can ask them. So the vision, and actually this is a very interesting sentence. So the vision is to develop a government private cloud with a public cloud look, feel, and functionality. So looks nice, but we are not inventing nothing. Everything is already invented. And these are some of the goals and objectives of building a government private cloud. the core objective is to optimize IT production for government consumption. So if you are building something for government use, well, might well be optimized for government consumption. There are some 2 or 3 bullet points, and time is short, that I would like to pinpoint here. It's the idea of having a shopping list. So sometimes governments, and I did work for the government in Portugal and in Mozambique, sometimes governments, every government organization, every ministry has its own IT department, and they have their databases, and it's not uniform. So some use Oracle, others use Microsoft SQL Server, others use open source. So one of the key ideas of having a government private cloud is to have well-defined services that can cover the entire needs of the entire government department. And doing so, we can save some dollars, and we can get as well, detailed cost and consumption tracking. For instance, if a tenant, and I will explain better what tenants might use this cloud, goes there and spin a virtual machine, his department is going to get an invoice saying, okay, you spin that virtual machine, you are using that virtual machine, and you use that virtual machine for 3 months. And now you should pay for it. Also, having a shopping cart, let's say, allows for a very agile and in terms of response time, and a very well-defined service level. Because when you build a government private cloud, okay, you say you have this shopping cart, and you can deliver SLAs to your internal clients. And that's also very important. You can say that, okay, my service level is 99.99%, or you can say that it's just 99%, for instance, for any given type of service. And that allows, or all these blocks allows for decision makers to make a better informed decision. So they know how much is going to cost them. Well, they know the service level that cloud is offering, and this is a key takeaway. Another very important takeaway is we should build this government cloud to support any type of compliances, not only the best practices, the ISOs 27000 and so on, but have a detailed risk plan, have a detailed security plan. So these are all goals and objectives that government public cloud should, or private cloud should have. It's nothing new. So if you look to Rackspace or Amazon Web Services or Google, it's what they have. It's what they offer to their customers. Okay. Now, next slide. And how will we operationalize this government private cloud? Of course, you need to have a central team that manages the cloud itself, but then you will have several tenants, and you might have, for instance, the police service being a tenant, and the police service has its own IT team. So they have their own IT technicians, engineers, etc. So you can allow them to manage their own workloads. So if they have Exchange servers, Exchange experts, you might allow them to spin up a Windows machine, for instance, and manage their own Exchange server. But you might also have a tenant like, I don't know, a public library, which is a tenant of the cloud that doesn't have an IT team. So they don't understand mail, they don't understand technology, let's say. So your central team can address those tenants that don't have IT knowledge. So you can, on that government cloud, you can have this both operations model, meaning you can have tenants where they treat of their own IT, or you can have tenants that the central team treats of their IT. Make sense? If I'm speaking too fast, tell me, please. Now, the building blocks. So how are we going to build this infrastructure? First, let's start with the philosophy. So philosophy and the central piece is software-defined everything. And why software-defined everything? I did write what I want to tell you, because we can adapt to current and future needs without investing in the future that might not happen, and without investing in the present that might not support the future. Make sense? So being a software-defined infrastructure, it allows us to be very elastic, and allows us to think in the present, but prepare the future. And that's all so Huawei for sure, it's going onto that direction. Cisco, Alcatel, all the big vendors are going into that direction, so nothing new. And also a very important block of the overall philosophy is use commodity hardware. So if the intelligence is in the software, okay, any type of any server will do the trick if they respect the specifications. So if you define the specifications in terms of memory, processor, and disk, well, it might be a Dell server, it might be a Cisco server, it might be an HP server, a Supermicro, a Huawei server, and they will, and forgive me if I'm saying anything bad, they will pretty much do the same thing. So we should treat hardware as a commodity. And avoid vendor lock-in. So when I say avoid vendor lock-in, I'm not saying that we should go for just for the cheap commodity server. No, what I'm saying is we need to define our needs in terms of the technologies that we need, and then ask for all the players to, well, what's your best price, for instance? What's your support? We need to avoid to get locked into proprietary solutions, if you know what I mean, into technologies that only that specific vendor knows how to address. And to finish, keep it open. Keep it open in a way that share your ideas, share your problems with the community. And the CTU is a global community. Share your problems, share your ideas, because the biggest amount, well, if you have many people brainstorming, the results are for sure going to be better. So these are the building blocks. Service automation, I'm going to give 1 minute, I'm going to speak a minute to them all. So service automation, the orchestrator, network underlay, the software-defined networking, the software-defined wide area networking, the network function virtualization, the server hardware, the software-defined storage, and the hypervisor. So let's start with the service automation building block. So the service automation, it's the storefront. It's where your tenants go. They open a web page, and on that web page you have a list of services that you can buy. A very important key takeaway from this building block is that it has a billing mechanism built in. So if you want to send an invoice to the public library, you can send an invoice to the public library with a $ or not. So you can send the invoice, just say, okay, that's what you spend in terms of resources for your, for you to see how much you are consuming, or you can even send an invoice with a $ value for them to pay. So that's an important takeaway from the service automation layer or the building block. Then going down the path, we have the orchestrator, and the orchestrator, it's the, normally I like to say it's the policy tool that provisions all the services into the software and into the hardware. And I like to say it's a policy tool because you can get a level of abstraction. So the person or the gentleman or the group that is defining the policies, they really don't need to understand what's under the hood to work with orchestrator. Okay? They can define the policies or the policy, and then the orchestrator will implement that policy. So this is the core of the solution. The third building block is the network underlay, and the network underlay is no more than the switches, the network switches that connect all the hosts. We should use commodity hardware, in my opinion, and avoid vendor lock-in. So you should define the list of technologies that your equipment needs to support, and then you should bid to Cisco, Alcatel, to Huawei. Okay, I need this. So what's your well, what you have to offer, and then choose according to well, if they meet the criteria and if they have a good price. Once again, commodity hardware. The software-defined networking layer. It's my favorite. Sorry. It's the tool that provisions the network services for the workloads that you are spinning. So it's a gentleman goes to the web page. Okay, I want to deploy a Windows server, and I want 8 gigs of memory, and I want 100 gigs of disk, and I want a network card that connects to the internet. The service automation tool will send that information to the orchestrator, and then the orchestrator is going to spin up the server, the Windows machine, and it's going to tell, okay, you need 8 gigs, you need 100 gigs of disk. Then it's going to inform the software-defined networking layer to give the network features, for instance, a public IP. We could be here the entire week, and I know that it's already getting late. There are two topics that I want to pass to you on the service-defined networking layer. First is the microsegmentation. So now imagine that you are you are spinning a VM, a web-based virtual machine, and with microsegmentation you can control which traffic goes in and comes in and goes out of that virtual machine on the virtual interface. So that's true defense in depth. So people, I started working at IBM in 2001. It was one of the big hypes by then is, okay, defense in depth. You need to have not only the perimeter firewall, but you need to have more layers of firewall. This solves all those problems, gives a big defense in depth, and allows for tenant isolation. So I can have a cloud working with a very heterogeneous group of tenants. And I know that they will not impact the service of the other, in terms of security, the other tenant. Another interesting characteristic of the software-defined networking is the service chaining. So I can say on a specific workload, in a specific virtual machine that, okay, any traffic that leaves this virtual machine is service chained to another virtual machine. For instance, you have a virtual machine that it's an Exchange server, a mail server. And you can, just by a policy, you can force that any traffic that leaves that mail server goes to a mail sweeper, for instance. This is such a breakthrough that, well, it's the future. Now, the software-defined wide area network. This is a very interesting innovation that happened on the last year. Pretty much, so we have a policy-driven data center where we define the policies, and then we have an automation layer that implements those policies. But our users are not on the data center. Our users are on the branch offices, on the central offices. This type of tool allows us to extend the policy that we have on the data center to our branch office. And it allows us to do it on a very quick and efficient way. So, for instance, you open an embassy in Portugal, for instance, in Lisbon. You go to Lisbon, you open an embassy in Lisbon. And you want to connect your embassy to your central office, which is your government cloud. You just need to send the box there, connect to the internet, and the box will automatically communicate with the central office to receive all the necessary policies for it to apply. And in the end, I can show you a video, a 2-minute video, for you to see how easy it is to deploy this. This is a major breakthrough. And it's also a major breakthrough because it uses, it can use the internet as a way for you to connect all your branch offices, all your central offices. And this is it's not very polite of me to say, but the service providers can lose revenue because of this type of over-the-top technologies, because well, companies, governments can use the internet as well a way to connect in a very secure fashion their branch offices. Yeah. I'm going to skip just to. I'm happy to show this on the. If you want to see all the rest of the building blocks. Now, how can you use this? How can you use this cloud? So, these are the cloud consumers that we can have. Well, we can have more. We can have any type of public institution, government ministries, the police service, the fire service, any type of e-government initiatives. For instance, you have the file return initiative. Okay, you need to have an infrastructure to deploy that software. Well, you have your government cloud to do so. You can extend this for any type of non-profit organization, like to the hospital, for instance, to charities. It's up to you. You can put any tenant that fits the bill. And you can charge actual money for it or not. Okay? You will have the tools to do so. Now, a lot was spoken about the single ICT space. And I think this slide pretty much summarizes it all. So imagine that you defined a blueprint, a government cloud blueprint. And so you discuss in this forum, and okay, this is the direction we want to go. This is what we want to do, and then you deploy this on your island nation. Other CTU members can deploy on their island nation, and you can federate, for instance, for disaster recovery purposes. So you have the same. You have the same technologies, you have the same philosophy, so it's easy to move workloads from one side to the other side for disaster recovery purposes. For instance, Bermuda is going to have the America's Cup in 2017, and one of the problems that they have is that they don't have enough horsepower in their servers to deliver services that are just needed for a couple of weeks. You can extend. You can ask other island nations to, okay, so I need this. Do you have enough processing capacity, enough disk to help me? I just need this for 2 weeks. So you don't need to buy hardware or software or whatever just for those 2 weeks. Technical resources sharing is also very important. So you can build a community of engineers that know exactly what's happening on their cloud, on the cloud of their neighbors, and they can share ideas. They can even, if there is any type of crisis, well, you have someone that understands your platform on the island next door. last but not least, economy of scale. So if you have the same type of architecture and you deploy the same type of building blocks and you deploy this across more jurisdictions, you will have the economy of scale that most likely you alone will not have. And that's it in a nutshell. And I deleted almost 20 slides. Any questions?
Well, let's see if you have any questions for David about the cloud technologies. I see Mr. Wilson here. I'll just step off.
Okay.
David Selby Wilson from the CTU. What is the estimated time to accomplish a government cloud in the Caribbean?
So all these building blocks, we have currently a project running on well, it's an enterprise, it's not the government, but we have this this strategy, and it's a 5 month time frame to deliver. So the second they send out the purchase order, it's 5 months to deliver. And why I can say this very clearly, because we made, with all these moving parts, we already had all the necessary POCs, and so we know, of course we might have surprises, but we know what's expecting. Now, depending on the complexity, it can extend more, but the core, I think 5 months, it's what we expect to deliver.
What would be the prerequisite requirements of the governments in the region to advance to this solution?
So one of the slides that I deleted was from the UK government, and actually, so the UK government, they have a very good digital government platform. And one of the key topics that they say is define user needs. And I think that's the most difficult thing for you to do, is to define the user needs. And after you define the user needs, it's where you pretty much start everything. So first you need to define the user needs. All these building blocks, first, I was in a conference, a very restricted conference last week in San Diego, where I've met the CTO of Citibank, from Banco Santander, from Bank of America, and they're all shifting to this type of infrastructure, all. And why? Because they see that they can optimize the resources that they have and scale infinitely. So they can start, and that's, I don't know if I was able to pass this message, but you can start this big, and then if you need a bit more, okay, you just add a bit more. You don't need to start this big, and then in 5 years you see, oh, why did I spend that much money? I don't know if I responded to your question.
Any others? Devendra Ramnarayan.
Yeah, just a quick question on personal data protection legislation and cloud solutions. How would you address that? Or are you proposing a private cloud on every island?
If I'm proposing a private cloud on every island, what I'm proposing is to have a federation. You need to have something on each island that participates on the cloud. You need to have something. Because there are workloads that need to, well, latency, for instance. There are workloads that need to be more immediate. But, and I don't want to speak against smaller islands, of course, but for instance, probably Jamaica needs more resources in terms of computing, storage, and than a smaller island like the British Virgin Islands. The idea is to have a piece, or you need to have a piece on every island. But all those pieces are intertwined. They are completely connected. And that's the beauty of this type of solution, is that it intertwines, so it was designed from the ground up to be very easy to connect and very easy to grow.
So would you know where your data is stored, or would it be on any of the islands that's in the cloud?
Sorry?
Would you know where your data is stored, or
Yes.
would you have personal
So
data protection issues?
so you can have that data locality. For instance, the project that we are working, data locality is very important. So you know at any given time where your data is stored. Okay, so data locality, it's a fact.
The question of data storage, I'd imagine that the data is stored in the Caribbean.
Yes, this is your own infrastructure.
Right.
This is private.
Yeah.
Now, you might ask, okay, can we integrate with an Amazon Web Services? Yes, you can, like Obama said. You can, if you want to do so. If you want to have your government data in US soil, probably not. For instance, Microsoft has a very big problem in their hands because the first level court and the second level court in the US, they subpoena them to deliver data that belongs to a customer of them that is located in Ireland. So this is, so the US court wants the data from a Microsoft client that is in Ireland. It's data locality, it's a very key asset, and you should keep, and this is my understanding, you should keep your data local. You should.
Okay, thank you, David.
Thank you. Please. I'm glad with all those questions.
Would you say, David, that this would be this Caribbean cloud, for want of simplifying the concept, it would be an important first step in the establishment of the single ICT space?
Yeah, I think it's essential. It's essential, of course, you can say it will save money. It will save money for sure, because if it didn't save money, the banks will not look into it first. But I think it's a way for you to achieve the single ICT space. I think it's a tremendous starting point. And since this is well, a technology that it's here to last. It's starting. Well, it started in 2011, 2012. But it's already mature for the banks to look to it. But it's starting now. So your engineers, your local engineers, will be in the brink of technology. They will be they will be learning high-end stuff. And that's also very important for the islands to be. Yeah, the knowledge. It's important. It's very important. And knowledge is everything on this society.
Yeah. All right, I guess we could use it to decide what data needs to be regionalized. All right, thank you very much, David. We are now at 5:20. I'll remind you all about the evaluation forms, but I'll just wrap up the day. Basically say thank you for your attendance and endurance through our 13th Caribbean Ministerial Strategic ICT Seminar. We started from 8:30 and we focused on the Caribbean single ICT space concept throughout, starting with the comprehensive keynote this morning, which kind of laid out a full range of issues for us to address. We also saw a presentation on the single ICT space concept, objectives, and so on. And certainly from some of the feedback we received, it helped clarify the concept for much of our audience. We had a presentation on the imperative of e-government services, the takeaway I had from that was that, e-government is not really a technology project. That it really is a service project, and we position technology really as a tool for delivering our product, which is services, government services to citizens. And that has certain implications as to how we should approach the implementation. We also heard that when we are doing our developments, that to keep in mind that we want to make them also compatible with IPv6. In the afternoon, we talked about the field and the soil, and we realized that open data is really the soil that we need to help develop ICT innovation around the Caribbean. We had what was for me a very enjoyable and eye-opening presentation as well, focused on ICT for persons with disabilities. And this is, as Trevor said, something that the CTU has been including in its various events over the last couple of years or so, I would say. And I think it's an aspect that we want to keep our members sensitized, our government members in particular, sensitized to for greater inclusiveness of the full community. And finally, in the industry briefs, we heard from Christopher Lee Mills from Huawei, talking about safe cities, and he drew an example from Trinidad and Tobago in terms of what Huawei was helping us to do there. We heard from ICANN, urging greater Caribbean participation in some of these internet governance activities. And there are really some opportunities there for us to influence what is going on in the evolution and development of the internet. We have some Caribbean participation, but there's a great deal of room for improvement. We can really seek to influence what goes on there. And finally, the very interesting presentation from David on a cloud architecture that could help implement the Caribbean single ICT space. So I hope that at the end of it all, you would have found the day to be satisfying, edifying, and enjoyable. I want to thank our sponsors again, Huawei, our gold sponsor, Digicel, Lime, and CCT. And I think they would probably also be there tomorrow, so that you can drop in if you haven't yet dropped in. So, are we all ready to go now? I hope so, because I'm all done. Thanks again. Tomorrow, please God, we enter our last day of our ICT week, which is the Regulators Forum. And we'll be looking at items of interest to regulators, and in the afternoon in particular we'll be looking at some of the things coming up with respect to the World Radio Communication Conference of the ITU. So we look forward to seeing many of you there. Thank you.